Hi there, Medical Wildcats. I'm Joseph Guggenheim. I'm a 1972 graduate, and with the help of Dan from Alumni Relations, I'd like to speak to you today about one of my favorite subjects, Chicago pizza. Next, please. Now, what is Chicago pizza? It doesn't just refer to the zip code where it's made. There are three characteristics, according to the Encyclopedia of Chicago: enormous amounts of cheese and a thick, sweet pastry shell crust, very high oven temperatures with cornmeal sprinkled on the pan to help insulate the crust to keep it from burning, and very long cooking times, allowing patrons to consume many bottles of Chianti and Lambrusco while waiting. There are two other characteristics that I've added. One is it's always cooked in a round pan. You won't find Chicago pizza in a square pan. And it's assembled upside down. If you watch thin crust pizza being made, the cook will usually put the crust down and then a ladle of tomato sauce spread with the underside of the ladle, followed by the topping, followed by the cheese. Chicago pizza is just the opposite. The crust is down, followed by the cheese, and then the topping, and then the tomatoes, usually a chunky tomato sauce. This is done to avoid burning the cheese. Next, please. Now, there are several things that Chicago pizza is not, in my opinion. And that first one is that it is not square. There are other ingredients that I think should never go in Chicago pizza, although these are all listed in last year's Chicago Magazine ranking of the top pizzas in Chicago. In my opinion, raspberry jam, tuna, fried eggs, and gorgonzola have no place in a pizza. Next. We don't really know the origin of pizza, but the ancient Greeks made a snack food called platkous, which was a flat bread topped with herbs, onion, cheese, and garlic. In medieval times, the peasants around Naples made a snack also on flatbread. Next, please. Fast forward a few centuries to the late 19th century, and recipes were brought over from Italy to America, and they made pizza in the little Italy colonies around Taylor Street in Chicago. Pizza was made. Pizza became quite popular with GIs returning from Italy following World War II. Next. Chicago pizza probably began in 1943 with Ike Sewell opening a pizza place at 29 East Ohio Street at Wabash, which later became Pizzeria Uno. Next. Ike Sewell was born in a ranch near Wills Point, Texas in 1902. Wills Point is on Interstate 20, just east of Dallas. It's been called the gateway to East Texas. He tried a brief stint in the restaurant business after high school, but he got tired of stale pies and dirty dishes and surly customers. So he decided to go to college. He went to the University of Texas, where he was the most striking boy on the UT campus in 1923. It is said he had the largest pair of hands on campus, and he used them for smacking the opposing lineman silly on the gridiron or a friendly pat on the back to his frat brothers. Like Will Rogers, he never met a man he didn't like. And it was said that if Ike didn't know you, you didn't go to UT. Next. He was a 3-year starting guard. He was rather small. He started off at 5'10", weighing 170, and he beefed up to 190 by his senior year. His first year in 1923 he played rather erratically. Their arch rival opponent was Texas A&M, whom they played on Thanksgiving Day, but lost 29-0. Before his senior year, Ike decided he was going to get in better shape. So he spent the summer laying oil pipelines in the Texas summer heat. He said he ate fresh fruit and vegetable and meat, never ate ice cream, went to bed early, and never saw an unmarried woman. He returned to campus in great shape that year. He became All-Southwest Conference and All-American mention. Next. In college, he became interested in aviation, and he managed Jerry Marshall's aviation school. Jerry is seen here on the right. Jerry went on to operate an aviation school, but lost his life in an accident. Ike did become a pilot and took his frat brothers on some adventures in the sky. After college, he worked for airlines briefly. He worked for an airline which eventually became American Airlines, greeting arrivals at the airport in Fort Worth, Texas. Next. Ike and another restaurateur, Ricardo, decided they would open a pizzeria after in the Prohibition. They were trying to decide what cuisine to have, and Ike wanted Tex-Mex to remind him of his home in Texas. But Rick said no, that Tex-Mex food literally made him sick. Rick wanted pizza, but Ike said no, that's not substantial food. So they settled on deep dish pizza. Next. Rick was an Italian immigrant. His real name was Richard Novarelli. He and his family opened a bar and restaurant that was operating until 1995 on Rush Street. Next. They opened Pizzeria in 1943, and that was the name of it, Pizzeria. It was on 29 East Ohio Street, where it still stands. After a while, they renamed it Pizzeria Ricardo. Ike stood outside on the sidewalk and handed out free samples, hoping to draw customers in for food and drink. He shared the building with many clients over the years, including a bordello, until he finally bought the building in 1982. Next. It is unknown whether Ike or Rick ever actually made a pizza themselves, but they employed Rudy Malnati Sr. and Alice Mae Redmond in their first pizzeria. Now remember those names because they're going to pop up later. Rudy became the manager for Ike's 3 restaurants. They changed the name to Pizzeria Uno when their second restaurant, Pizzeria Due, opened nearby. Next. Ike also opened up a Mexican restaurant because he said he could not get a good bowl of chili outside of Texas. This was Chicago's first upscale Mexican restaurant. He opened it in 1963 at 49 East Ontario, named Casa. Next. Ike was given the National Football Foundation Distinguished American Award for his football accomplishments as well as his business accomplishments. He died in 1990 of leukemia. His wife, Florence, was a generous philanthropist and gave generously to a Northwestern Memorial Hospital and the Rehabilitation Institute, which was later named Shirley Ryan Ability Lab. Next. Genos East on East Superior was the second oldest of the big name Chicago pizzerias. It opened in 1966. 2 men, Sam Levine and Fred Bartoli, called themselves cab drivers. They wanted to try their hand at the pizza business. Actually, they were not cab drivers. They were successful entrepreneurs who owned 4 cab companies. Therefore, they could afford the expensive real estate just off the Magnificent Mile. They hired Alice Mae Redmond, who was one of Ike Sewell's original cooks in Uno, and her sister, Ruth Hadley. So they knew how to cook deep dish pizza. One of the traditions that has persisted over the years is that the M4 students at Feinberg get the results of match day at Genos East. And also the customers are allowed or encouraged to write on the walls while waiting for their pizza. Next. Pizanos is another one of the established deep dish pizzerias in the Chicago area. The closest one to Feinberg is at 864 North State. This one was opened up in 1991 by Rudy Malnati Jr. Now, remember, Rudy Malnati Sr. was the original manager of Pizzeria Uno. So this is Rudy Sr.'s son. Rudy Sr. had 2 sons, Rudy Jr. and Lou Malnati. Next. The legend is that Rudy Sr.'s widow made dough balls for the crust in the basement of the restaurant at night using the family's secret recipe. Pizanos makes thin and deep dish pizza, and the thin crust is Oprah's favorite. Next. Lou Malnati's was opened up in 1971. The original one was in the suburbs. Lou emigrated from Italy at age 17. He is one of the two sons of Rudy Malnati Sr., who managed Ike's original three restaurants. Lou worked for Pizzeria Uno himself for 22 years. He wanted a piece of the ownership of Pizzeria Uno, but Ike would not give it to him. So he left the company and spent 14 months thinking of what he wanted to do and decided he wanted to open a pizzeria in the suburbs. Next. His father, Rudy Sr., shown on the right with the glasses, did not think a pizzeria in the suburbs would succeed. But Lou went ahead anyway, and with his wife, Jean, opened Lou Malnati's Pizzeria in Lincolnwood in 1971. Next. And the rest is history. They now have 62 locations in the Chicago area and Indiana. The closest one to Feinberg is at 1120 North Rush Street. It's a family business, and in this old family portrait, you can see his sons, Mark and Rick, who operate his restaurants now. Next. Lou died of a brain tumor in 1978, but his family has been very generous to Feinberg. They've established the Lou Malnati Cancer Foundation, the Lou and Jean Malnati Brain Tumor Institute, and have endowed the Jean Malnati Miller Professor of Brain Tumor Research. Next. Stuffed pizza appeared on the scene in the 1970s. It's sort of like Chicago pizza on steroids. It consists of a bottom layer of a thin garlicky crust, followed by cheese, followed by another thin crust layer, followed by the topping, followed by the tomatoes. Two of the places that originated it are Nancy's and Giordano's. Closest Giordano's to Feinberg is at 730 North Rush. Next. Well, now you know the history of Chicago pizza, and I'll leave it to you to try to discover what the best pizza in Chicago is. That's always going to be a controversial subject. I'm going to leave you with a couple of rankings, one from Chicago Magazine and another from Eater Chicago. In the meantime, stay safe, stay healthy, and stay connected, and I hope we can get together again virtually next month.